All right, welcome back, everybody. It's time. It's leaving. I hope that you've all had a chance to check out the homework. The homework's due tonight. You're going to send it to Gradescope. Please let me know if you are unsure about how to do that or whatever, or if you have real mathematical questions about the homework. I would be happy to try and help out by email, or we could talk on Zoom during my office hours today. And we have our first quiz on Friday. So remember, the quiz is meant to cover the same stuff that you saw on the homework. So you should expect questions about plurality system, the Condorsay method, and the Borda count on the quiz. Especially as far as the Borda goes, you should not expect to have to do a lot of adding and multiplying, but very simple things you should expect on the quiz. Anybody have any questions about the quiz? Remember, the way we're going to do the quiz is we'll just take the first 10 minutes or so. I will tell you the questions, you will write the answers, and I would like to, I'd like for you to submit the quizzes on Gradescope also. So that means you should bring your phone, something capable of doing the Gradescope, and you will write your answers to the quiz questions and then send them in, and then we'll just go on with the rest of the class. Does that sound all right to everybody? Any questions about that? That's what I want to do. Remember, I think I said before, but if you are concerned, if you typically take extra time on tests and you're concerned about the quiz, let me know. I hope you don't feel too concerned about it. It's meant to not be a big deal, but please do let me know. All right. It's going to be great. I am looking forward to it. Okay, let's continue what we were talking about last time. I actually just wanted to say a little bit more about these two criteria for judging fairness of voting systems. They are two different ways that you could try to judge if a system is good or not. The majority criterion is, so they're both about sort of, if there is a candidate who seems to be really strong, then they should probably win the election. And these are two different ways of judging a really strong candidate. The majority says that if a candidate is actually ranked in the top position by a majority of the voters, then they should be the winner of the election. And the Condorsay winner criterion, that's what CWC means. It says if there is a Condorsay winner, that is somebody who would have won in all of the one-on-one pairings, then they should win the election. And we talked last time about how, not all voting systems will satisfy both of these properties, but I think we started sort of making a chart, right? Plurality, and we talked about the Borda also. And we have these two criteria here. I would not expect you to memorize this chart, but we said the plurality does satisfy the majority. A lot of these are fairly easy to just reason through. If somebody really is ranked on the top in a majority of the ballots, they're going to win if you use the plurality system. But it turns out they will not necessarily win if you use Borda. We put an X there. We had an example last time where you can have somebody on the top of a majority of ballots, but like on the bottom of all the other ones, and then maybe somebody else will get enough points just by being in second place a bunch of times to beat out the majority candidate. Anyway, plurality and Borda both do not satisfy the Condorsay winner criterion. All right. One last thing I want to say about these two criteria, which I was hoping to say at the end last time, but I didn't get to it, is actually one of them is kind of stronger than the other one, or one of them implies the other one. This is another little theorem. Remember, this just means a true fact about all of this that we can prove. We can actually explain why it's true. If some system satisfies the second one there, the Condorsay winner criterion, then automatically it satisfies the other one. Then it satisfies majority criterion. Let's see if we can explain why that is. if it satisfies the Condorsay winner criterion, then automatically it satisfies the majority criterion. You have to imagine some system. I'm not telling you what it is, plurality or border or anything else you could imagine. Imagine that it does satisfy Condorsay winner. We want to explain why it does satisfy the majority. So I'm going to write a little proof here. As usual, I'm not going to use any like equations or anything. We have to just explain in words why what I just said there is actually true. To show it satisfies the majority criterion, this is what we need to show this, right? And I'm going to assume this. Some system satisfies the Condorsay winner criterion. Assume this, right? And then we need to show the other part. That's how you would logically explain this, right? You imagine that you have a system which does satisfy the Condorsay winner, and then you have to explain why it satisfies the majority criterion. Okay, how would we do that? Remember, majority means if someone is ranked on the top of a majority ballots, then you have to explain why they will automatically win the election. So I'm going to say, assume that someone is ranked on top of a majority of the ballots. Someone is ranked first on a majority of the ballots. And then I'm going to say, we'll explain why they must win the election, right? That's what it means to satisfy the majority criterion. If somebody's actually ranked at the top on a majority, you have to explain why do they win the election. And we don't know what the system is. All we have to go on is we have assumed that it satisfies the Condorsay winner criterion, all right? But I would like you, and I haven't said anything about Condorsay anything here, but I would like you to notice, if someone really is ranked first on a majority, I think that automatically makes them the Condorsay winner. If they're actually on top on a majority of the ballots, then if you consider them versus any one other opponent, they're going to win because they were already on top on a majority of the ballots. So this majority candidate, is a Condorsay winner because they're on top by a majority on every ballot. So that means automatically they would win against anybody else if you pitted them individually, all right? This majority candidate is a Condorsay winner. So since we have assumed that first red thing that I underlined there, we assumed that our system satisfies the Condorsay winner criterion. So since we assumed CWC, this can, I'm zoomed. Since we assumed the Condorsay winner, this candidate will win. And I have now explained why. If someone is ranked top by a majority, that means they're the Condorsay winner. And since we assume the Condorsay winner is going to win, that means they're going to win. All right? And that's the end. I have shown what I said I needed to show, right? It satisfies the majority criterion. Usually, like, mathematicians like to write something at the end of a proof to indicate that the proof is over. Sometimes, maybe you've heard people say that before. QED is like a Latin phrase, which means something like, I done showed what I said I was going to show, something like that. That's actually kind of old-fashioned in my experience. Modern-day mathematicians don't write that. They just say something like, we have now shown what we were supposed to show, or something like that. I have an old math book from like the 19-teens. At the end of every proof, it says this, Shun. I kind of like writing that at the end of a math proof. Shun. It means I showed what I was going to show. All right. This is the end. So if some system satisfies the Condorsay winner criterion, then it satisfies the majority. That means in this chart here, if you ever see a check in this column, automatically there will also be a check in this column. There must be. Although the other way around is not true. It's like you can see already. It is possible to have a check over here, but not over here. All right. So you should think of the Condorsay winner is sort of like a stronger version of the majority. It's like harder to get a check over here. But if you do get a check over here, you automatically get a check over here. All right. Anyway, this can allow us to fill in. Can I just fill in? I would like you, I think it would be best if you had like one page in your notes where you had this chart. I don't know if you wrote this down last time, but maybe save yourself some space, because like I said, we're going to be adding on to this as we go forward over the next few weeks. We're going to be adding more voting systems and also more criteria in the column. So we should also at this point have the Condorsay method. And because of what I just said, this is going to be an easy discussion. What about right here? Can we put a check or an X here? The Condorsay winner criterion means if there's a Condorsay winner, they should win. And if we're using the Condorsay method, I think that's the whole point of the Condorsay method, is that it makes the Condorsay winner into the winner of the election. So there's a check here, all right? That's sort of what the Condorsay method is meant for. It's meant so that it chooses the winner if there's a Condorsay winner. It chooses that guy, that person. All right, and automatically, because of the theorem, we don't even have to talk about it. Right here, you can put a check, because the theorem we just said was if you ever have this checked, then this one is also checked, right? If it satisfies the Condorsay winner, it automatically satisfies the majority, all right? So we get a check over here, sort of for free because of the theorem, okay? This is Condorsay's method. Now, this looks great. The fact that I got 2 checks here, that means the Condorsay method is really it is judged to be good in both of these respects. Although, like I've said before, the Condorsay method actually is not used in the real world because it doesn't always choose a winner. There isn't always a Condorsay winner. And so this, as we go forward, we're going to see actually a lot of checks in this row, which is kind of tantalizing, but ultimately disappointing, because this is not actually a method which is suitable for use in the real world, even though, as we'll see, it's going to have a lot of checks here. We have to settle for one of these other ones, which unfortunately are going to have some X's. All right. Great. Let's talk a little bit about, I want to get to another voting system today, which will be another row on the chart here, although I don't think we're going to revisit the chart today. Another voting system. And this one, I'll tell you the name of it, although it's going to take a little while before we get to describing exactly what it is. It's called the instant runoff voting. So I'm going to call it IRV, instant runoff voting. And the purpose of this, it is designed to be a system in which people's choices lower down on their list can actually be meaningful if their top choice doesn't win. So it's meant to, I will say, honor voters' second, third, etc. choices in case their top choice doesn't win. All right, this is the point of the instant runoff system. It was designed in order to, so that if the person I'm voting for, if my first choice isn't going to win, then the system is meant to take into account my other choices in that scenario, all right? This is actually a major problem with the plurality system. So actually, before I tell you exactly what instant runoff voting means, can we just do a little diversion? I would like to complain about the plurality system a little bit. Complaints about plurality. As we go forward, maybe you've noticed this already. I'm kind of down on the plurality system. I'm not into the plurality system like that, really. What I'm about to say is my own, like the main sort of reason that I personally am suspicious of the plurality system. One major feature of the plurality system, with the plurality system, if your top vote, or if your top choice doesn't win, then your vote doesn't really count for anything. All right. Your vote only really matters if your top choice is going to win. And if your top choice is not going to win, and this is something that, I don't know if you all have voted before, but this is something that every voter knows. If my top choice isn't going to win, I might as well just stay home, right? In the American system, or in the plurality system, and this is how it works in, say, when we elect the president or whatever. If you already know the guy you want to vote for is going to lose, there's no point in even voting at all, right? It has no effect if you're just going to go out and vote for the loser, all right? This is a simple sort of mathematical truth about the plurality system, which actually has huge ramifications on politics. So here I'm going to talk about politics a little bit. I'm not going to talk about my own opinions about politics. These are just true facts about politics and the way it works in the United States. If you don't vote for the winner, then your vote is useless, right? You have the phrase that people use in American politics is you have thrown your vote away. All right, that's what they say. For example, in the Bush-Gore-Nader election, remember the votes in the Bush-Gore-Nader election were something like 2.9 million said Bush-Gore-Nader, 2.9 million said Gore-Bush-Nader, and 0.1 million said Nader-Gore-Bush, right? From a certain point of view, a purely mathematical point of view, those people who voted for Nader are all suckers because their vote didn't matter for anything. Now, actually, it did matter because it made Gore lose the election. They probably shouldn't have gone that way if they really preferred Gore over Bush. But these votes here, these Nader voters, were in a sense wasted votes because they didn't actually contribute to the outcome of the election. They didn't make anybody win that they wanted to win. All right, these Nader voters, and this is what they say in politics, throw their votes away. And when we're close to elections, the two major party candidates will always say this. Both of the two major party candidates will say, don't vote for those other guys. There's always like a few other people on the ballot. But they say, don't bother voting for them. This election is like too important to throw your vote away on them because we all know that they're not going to win. All right. Another way that you see this effect in our politics is when people are campaigning. I actually saw this a lot in Donald Trump did this a lot. When he was campaigning to become the president, he said a lot about like, I'm gonna be a good president, and that's why you should vote for me. But a lot of what he said was, I'm gonna win, and that's why you should vote for me. All right? And so in American politics, it is a true fact. Not only do you have to convince the voters that you would actually be a good president or whatever, you also have to convince the voters that you're gonna win. Because if the voters think you're not gonna win, then they're not gonna go out and vote for you, and then you really won't win. All right? So part of the campaigning is this kind of fictional illusion. You have to convince people that you're going to win, even if you're really not, or something. I saw this this was maybe 2 or 3 presidential elections ago. I saw this on the news. I thought it was so ridiculous. Somebody who was in the polls. They were down. This was like a week before the presidential election, and I think this is John McCain. And they said, hey, McCain, like it looks like your poll numbers are kind of low. It looks like maybe you're going to lose. You're not going to become the president. He said, no. Low poll numbers, that's exactly where I want to be because that's what's going to make us win. And it's like, what are you talking about? That is not where you want to be. But the fact is, no presidential candidate in America can ever say, you know what, you're right, I think I'm probably not going to win. You can't say that because then even more people will fail to vote for you, all right? Anyway, this has a distorting effect on our politics. It means that as part of a campaign, it's not good enough to just say that you're going to be a better president or whatever. You also have to say some nonsense about how great that you're actually going to win. That's my little political rant. It's not much of a rant. That's just how our politics works. Have you ever heard a political candidate saying, you know what, I think we're probably not going to win, but I'm really going to try? No, they never say that. Even if that's obvious, even if that's true, they are incentivized to lie to you about, oh yeah, we're going to pull it out at the last moment. Let me just say, Plurality has strong incentives for voters to only vote for serious contenders, right? If you think your guy might not win, you're not even going to vote for them at all. Plurality has strong incentives for voters to only vote for serious contenders. The major effect of this is not what I just said is kind of a gripe that I have, because I like for politicians to be honest. I know this is kind of a ridiculous expectation, but when they say things that are obviously false just because they're trying to win the election, I'm not into that. But the much more obvious effect of this is that third parties are sort of permanently disadvantaged. There's always the Democrat and the Republican, and there's some other people, the outsiders, but nobody's going to vote for the outsiders because they know in the plurality system, if you don't vote for one of the serious contenders, then you might as well not vote at all right? This has a sort of permanent disadvantage to outsider candidates. And actually, this is something that has been noticed in like global politics over history, and it has a name for this. This is from like political science, which I'm not a political scientist, but there's a general principle called, I don't know how to pronounce this properly, but Duverger's law, say. I think that might be a French name, in which case it should be pronounced differently. But anyway, this is an observation about the way that political systems across the world work in the context of the plurality system. And it says, in the real world, in real politics, this is not something specific about America. This is true more or less everywhere. In real politics, governments using the plurality system eventually become two-party systems. They don't start out that way necessarily. Like if you, old American history, like America's not always been dominated by the Democrats and the Republicans. There were like other parties in the early days. But once you get locked into the two parties, the Democrat and the Republican, it becomes impossible to break out of that two-party system. Now, people in America talk about this as if it's just like an obvious fact. Well, yeah, we have the two-party system, and that's just the way that the world works, is that when you do politics, you get two parties, and that's just the way it is. Well, it is just the way it is, but it's because we use the plurality system that this exists, right? If we were using a different system, it would not necessarily be stuck in the two parties. And this is like a lot of people talk about how, our big problem in America is that we have the two parties and they don't agree, and so nothing can get done or something. And they sort of shrug their shoulders. Yeah, we got the two parties, but what are you going to do about it? Well, it's because of the plurality system. This is what I think a lot of people don't realize. It's because of the plurality system that the two parties are entrenched. So this is because of plurality. Now, this principle that I wrote it's not like a mathematical law, but it is something that you can see in history and in politics around the world. It generally has happened this way. Nations which use, democracies which use the plurality system, they generally become two-party states if you let them sort of go for long enough. I just want to say this is because of the plurality system. And all of this is sort of a preamble. Plurality. All right. All of this is sort of a preamble to this other system that I said we were going to talk about, the instant runoff voting system. The purpose of the instant runoff is to make it so that as a voter, even if my top choice loses, my other choices still matter in deciding the outcome. This would encourage me as a voter, even if sort of my guy, even if I know my guy is going to lose, I'm still going to go out and vote so that hopefully, even if my guy loses, my other choices will still matter. And this is meant to kind of break out of this kind of problem with the plurality system, which ignores your second, third choices. All right. So, anyone have any comments about that? I'm talking a bit about politics, and I'm not an expert on politics. So I hope that you take everything that I say with a little grain of salt. And I would welcome any opinions from the folks here. Anybody have any thoughts? I have always in my life thought that the two-party system is kind of messed up, and so this is why I am encouraged at changing things in a way which disrupt the two parties. Although I've heard, some people love the two parties. I don't, but that's just my own opinion. All right, let's talk about the instant runoff voting system. I'm going to write IRV, instant runoff. This is a system which actually is used in real-world politics. I think I mentioned before, the Borda isn't really used in the real world very often at all, but the instant runoff is actually fairly common. It's becoming more and more common. So in real politics, it's used in Australia. I have a brief list here. Used in Australia, Ireland, in India, and actually this system is used for the Congress, the United States Congress, in the great state of Maine. Any Mainers out there? No? All right. It's a great state, the great state of Maine. I actually went to college in Maine, and the only thing I remember about Maine politics was when I was in college, we'd see like the political signs by the side of the road or something, and there was a guy running for, I believe it was Congress, maybe state representative, a guy named Dick Sweat, and all the college bros were like, yeah, I'm gonna go out and vote for Dick Sweat, and I think he actually won. Yeah. He could have gone by Richard, but he didn't. That means something. Anyway, the instant runoff voting system. So in the United States, there are actually people who really want the United States to change from the plurality to this other system. Actually, these people include Ralph Nader. Would you believe it? Nader is really into the instant runoff voting system. Because, the point of the system is to give guys like Nader a break. But people who are against the instant runoff system tend to be like big party big shots, both in the Democrat and the Republican Party. Usually the like lifelong party man is not the instant runoff system, because in a lot of ways the intention of this is to somewhat disrupt the two-party structure. So people who are really into the two parties generally don't like this. But anyway, in the United States, it actually has a different name. They call it ranked choice voting. And you see this abbreviated like RCV. I'm not going to call it that. And like mathematicians who talk about the mathematics of voting don't call it this, because all of these methods we've talked about involved ranked choices. Like the Borda also involves ranked choices. Really, what's important about the method is not how the voters, not the fact that the voters are ranking their choices. The important thing is how the answer is computed, right? That's what's important. And this phrase, instant runoff, is trying to describe how you do it. Also, sorry, I had one more thing to say. And apparently the Academy Awards use this. Best movie ever. Apparently when they're voting, they do something, they rank their choices, and then they figure out the winner using this method that we're talking about. So it is used in the real world in some contexts. In America, it's generally called ranked choice voting, but mathematicians don't like to call it that because other methods involve ranking choices. All right, anyway, here's an example. I'm just going to sort of tell us how to do it by doing an example here. Let's say I have 4 candidates here. 38 people said A, B, C, D. 15 said B, D, A, C. 15 said B, C, D, A. 7 said D, C, A, B. 10 said C, D, B, A. And 15 said C, B, D, A. All right. Now, how are we going to do it? I'll try to sort of describe it in words here, and then we'll actually do it. So the way we do it is we start. Let me say it this way. We do it in rounds, right? And in each round, you begin by writing down the plurality vote totals by just looking in the first position. So find the plurality vote totals. And in each round, you're going to eliminate one candidate one after another. And how do you decide who gets thrown out is whoever had the fewest number of first place votes. So you find the plurality vote totals, and then the loser gets kicked out. And then you rerun the election. Now you don't actually ask the people to vote again. You just look back up here, but you kick out one of the candidates. And then again, you find the plurality vote totals. There will be only 3 left. You see who's the biggest loser, you throw them out again, and so on. So you find the plurality vote totals. The loser gets kicked out. And then recount with 1 fewer candidate for another round. And you keep on doing this until basically you're only down to 2 people, and then you count it up again and see who the winner is. All right. I don't know if this is confusing. We're going to do the example. You'll see it works out pretty nicely. If at any point, so you can go all the way until there's only 2 left. Sometimes it's possible to stop earlier if any candidate is first on a majority of ballots, then we stop and they win. Right? This will automatically happen if you go all the way until there's only 2 left. Then automatically in the last round, one of them will have a majority over the other one. But it's possible this can happen earlier, in which case you can stop. You don't have to go through all the remaining rounds. All right? This is how the instant runoff voting system works. Let's try this example here, and now I'm kind of run out of room. I'm going to move this down for myself. All right, so let's do round 1. I'm going to count up the plurality vote totals. That is just looking in the top position. A, B, C, D. I have A in the top position with 38 votes here, so A gets 38. B, I got to add a little bit. B in the top on these 2 columns, 15 and 15 makes 30. For C, I got these 2 columns, 10 and 15, so that's 25. And then D has only 7. All right. D being the biggest loser here, D is eliminated. Eliminate D. And now we're going to recount everything, but ignoring the D's. All right? So that was round 1. Round 2, you recount, ignore the D's, right? Now, when I ignore the D's, actually, I'm still only counting the top position votes, right? And they're actually mostly the same because these, like for instance, A still has 38 votes in the top position. What matters is I'm going to eliminate this D here, and so C will get promoted up to the top on these ballots. All right, so what I get is still A has 38, still B has 30, but this time C has 25 from those plus 7 from this one. All right, so this is 25 plus 7. I'll just write it that way so it's clear what happens. When I eliminated D, these votes, which used to be for D, now get counted for C. All right. Sometimes this system is called the transferable vote system, and the way that it's described, this is a little complicated, right? So it's sometimes hard to describe this to voters in the real world in a way that they will understand. And one way they say this is, if your top choice doesn't win, your vote will just automatically get counted for the next person instead. And that's what happens here, right? D got eliminated, so these 7 people, they are disappointed, but in the second round, their vote will be counted for C instead of D. That's how the system works. All right, anyway, now B will be eliminated, right? Because they are the loser in this round. Eliminate B, all right? You can have some kind of, some sort of dramatic events here, right? It didn't look so good for C here. They had me in the first round, right? But then actually C did a lot better in the second round. All right, this is how it works. Okay, eliminate B. Now we go, it's just A versus C now. So round 3, we count them up again. I'm off the screen, but at this point it's just A versus C. And now you count them up as if you were doing like the Condorsay method, but all we care about is really A versus C. Who's going to win A versus C? I'll just count the votes for A. I have 38 with A above C here, 15 with A above C here. Not there, not there, not there. So 38 and 15, that's 53, right? So A gets 53. I made this so that there's 100 voters here, and so C is going to get 47, and so A wins. All right. Yes?
So if there's more than like 4 candidates with votes, just look at the rounds, keep going.
Yeah.
Until you're left with 2.
That's right. You keep on doing the rounds until you've got only 2 left. Although, like I said before, you can stop early in some cases. Oops, sorry. You can stop early if any candidate has a majority first place votes. Then they're guaranteed to win every subsequent round, so you might as well just stop at that point and say they're the winner. All right, this is how we do the instant runoff system. Any questions about that? I got another example, but we all feeling good so far? All right, let's try one last time. I want to do that example on the handout that I gave out on the first day with the 37 voters. I will refresh your memory. It said 14 people say A. Sorry, I lost my paper. I got it here somewhere. Yes, 14 people said A, B, C, D. 10 people said C, B, D, A. 8 people, D, C, B, A. 4 people said B, D, C, A. And 1 person said C, D, B, A. All right, let's try to do this with the instant runoff system. Remember, there's 37 voters here. That means you need 19 to win. That would be a majority, I think. Anyway, let's do it. So, round 1. You go A, B, C, D, right? And in the first round, we're just counting the plurality scores, which we've done many times before. A has 14, B has only 4, C has 11, and D has 8. All right? And so we are going to eliminate B in the first round. Remember, actually, B was the winner if you used Borda. So you can get actually very different results using this instant runoff versus Borda. Because B was the winner overall in the instant runoff. B is out in the first round. All right, round 2. Sometimes, I didn't do this in the previous example. Sometimes, I don't know if it was unclear. Sometimes we can actually, If you want to, you don't have to do this. It's not so hard to do in your head. But having eliminated B, we can actually rewrite the chart. What I'm going to do is rewrite everything, but leaving out the B's, right? D, C, A. I am writing the same columns here, but I'm just omitting the B every time. This sometimes might help you to count it up better, although, you know, if you know what you're doing, this is not so hard to just do in your head. So you don't have to write this out in this amount of detail if you don't want to. But anyway, now we count them up. A, C, and D, right? A has, again, 14. C this time has a 10 and a 1 here, so that's 11. And D now has 8 and 4, which is 12. And so C will be eliminated in this round. And now it's just A versus D. So for round 3. And if you like, you can even redraw the chart this time, drawing only with A's and D's. So 14 say A over D, 10 say D over A, another 8 also say D over A, another 4 also say D over A, and another 1 also says D over A. And now A has 14, D has more than 14, right? 10 and 8 and 4, that's 22, 23. And so D wins. All right, this is the instant runoff system. Apparently, I've heard, I don't know if they still do this in Ireland, but when they started doing this instant runoff system in Ireland, they were still doing paper ballots and counting everything by hand. And so they would actually do the first round and they would announce the results, like on the news. They'd say, all right, the first round is in. Tell you the totals. They'd say this guy got eliminated, and then they send those people back into their locked rooms to count them up again. And then they say, okay, now the second round results are in. It's like a big, exciting, sporting event or something. And apparently they do. I think they do this on purpose. The people who wanted to change to the instant runoff system. Part of the appeal for the voters, you ask the voters, hey, do you like the new system? They're like, oh yeah, it's much more exciting, which is it's a very bad reason to change your political system because it becomes more exciting. But this is a way that they used that as like a PR thing to encourage people to try out the new system. That's how we do the instant runoff. If you recall, in this example, actually, this big example on the paper was specifically crafted so that you get a different winner with each of our 4 different methods, right? The winner using plurality was A, using Borda was B, using the Condorsay was C, and with the instant runoff you get D as the winner. All different winners. I would like to just point out, in this example, C was the Condorsay winner. We figured that out, I don't know, a few times ago. And one thing that means is the instant runoff, this is a bad thing about instant runoff, it does not always choose the Condorsay winner. If there is a Condorsay winner, they might still lose using the instant runoff system. And so that actually we can put on the chart. Remember the chart that I said we're going to be adding on to it? I had the plurality, the Borda, the Condorsay method, and then I'm going to put the instant runoff here, and the majority and the Condorsay winner criterion. Can you add this into your little chart? There's an X here. The Condorsay winner is not always chosen when you use the instant runoff system. All right, this is a bad thing about the instant runoff voting system. It does not guarantee that the Condorsay winner will win the election. Can we just, since we're here, can we talk about this? The majority criterion? Any thoughts about that? If there is a candidate who is a majority in the first place, are they automatically the winner? Or might they get like knocked out somehow in the rounds? I see some no's, and I also saw some yeses. Anybody feel strongly? If you're ranked first place on a majority of the ballots, yeah?
It doesn't guarantee that you're going to win. Like A was the plurality, like A had the majority of votes for.
Okay, yeah. So in this example, A had the most first place votes in the first round, but they ended up losing. But remember, the word majority means more than 50%. It doesn't mean more than anybody else. It means actually more than 50%.
But A had a majority in round 1 and round 2, and it still lost.
They did not ever have a majority here. Because there's 37 voters, a majority is, I think, 18, right? So there was, in this particular example, there was no majority. In fact, I don't know if you were listening when I said it. There's a technicality rule in the instant runoff. I said you can stop early. Did I say it? I must have said it. I know I said it. Here. If any candidate is first on a majority, then you can stop early and they're gonna and make them win. That's part of the rules actually, is that if anyone actually has a majority first place ranking, the rounds are over and that person wins. So actually there is a check here. All right? That's built into the rules of the instant runoff, and that is if there is a candidate in any one of the rounds who has a majority in the first place, they immediately win the election. All right? So certainly if they have a majority in the first round, the whole thing ends and that person wins the election. So it does satisfy the majority criterion, but not the Condorsay winner. Condorsay winner criterion is actually pretty hard to satisfy. It's a pretty strong condition. All right. We got a few minutes left. Let's just try one last example. One more of my favorite examples. Let's look at the Bush-Gore-Nader thing, see what would have happened. Now I said before, actually Nader really likes the instant runoff. It's not because it would have made him win, though. Nothing was going to make Nader win in that election. But let's try and count it up. So we have 2.9 million, say Bush-Gore-Nader. 2.9 million, say Gore-Bush-Nader. Remember, I'm doing this in a way which is charitable to Bush. Putting Bush in the middle there is not terribly realistic. I'm giving Bush the benefit of the doubt. All right. Can we do it with the instant runoff? How would we do it? We do the rounds. Okay, so round 1 is I add up the votes in top positions. Bush-Gore-Nader. Bush has 2.9. Gore has 2.9. Nader has 0.1. These are all millions, of course. And so who do we eliminate? Nader, yeah, definitely. Eliminate Nader. And so round 2 we do without Nader. Is just between Bush and Gore. If you want to rewrite the chart, it would look like 2.9 say Bush-Gore, 2.9 say Gore-Bush, and then 0.1 say Gore-Bush. And here the totals will be 2.9 for Bush and an even 3.0 for Gore, and Gore wins. All right. So this is the outcome of the Bush-Gore-Nader thing if you use the instant runoff. It doesn't make Nader win. I said Nader is really into the instant runoff. I think if you ask Nader, why do you like this system so much? He won't say, because I would have won if we used that. Nothing really was going to make him win. But I think what Nader would tell you is, if the voters knew that we were going to use instant runoff, they would have voted differently. Like, people would not have been afraid to vote for me. And so actually, Nader might have got a lot more votes. That is, people who voted for Gore, even though they really liked Nader, but they decided not to vote for Nader because they were going to throw their votes away, so they would have for Gore instead. Maybe some of those people would have voted for Nader instead. That's the idea. That's Nader's idea, at least. All right. I think that's enough for today. We got 2 minutes left, but that's our